Well, welcome once again to the Wise Old Soul, where we all know in each and every one of us, we will find that wise old soul. And today I am very excited about having Tom Cronin with me from Australia. And Tom, you've got such a wonderful story. I know that you started in the financial business. You held a position there for 26 years. That had to have been a pressure cooker. And all of a sudden, your life started to go down a different path. And here we are today with you looking to really kind of get this stillness project off where 1 billion people would be meditating. So, Tom, maybe we can go back a few years and how did you get into meditation, and how did you get out of the financial industry? What happened? That's a heck of a change.
It's definitely an extremity of two worlds for sure. Firstly, we'll start with the broking and the finance industry. So I was very young. I was 18 years old, finished school, and decided to go traveling around the world. And this is pretty much a rite of passage for Australians. When we decide to go overseas, we decide to go overseas for quite a stint because it's so far to get overseas. So I had been backpacking around the world for about 12 months. And then when I came back, I had a few months to fill in before I was going to do a university degree. So I just applied for a bunch of jobs in the paper. And this was before the internet. And the way we found jobs was using the newspaper. So I applied for a bunch of jobs. Next thing, I'm on a trading room floor. And it was the same year Wolf of Wall Street started his job in 1987. And it was kind of the crazy Wild West of the finance markets. It was very unregulated, unchecked, and it was crazy times. And before long, I was into lots of drinking, partying, drugs, obviously, and very, very late nights, extreme chaos in the daytime on a trading room floor. And what happened was over time, the accumulation of stress in my body and on my nervous system started to show up and impact me. And this started as like anxiety and panic attacks and depression, but it really started to morph and grow into something quite substantial. And eventually, after a few years, I had what was technically diagnosed as a nervous breakdown. So I was incapacitated. I really couldn't go to work. I was having mental health leave. I was riddled with deep, dark depression, these extreme panic attacks, anxiety, insomnia, and eventually agoraphobia. And doctors were giving me medication. I was seeing psychiatrists and psychologists, but I just felt something inside me wasn't quite right with that path, or something wasn't resonating. And the universe divinely organized for me to see a documentary about a property developer that was doing very successful things in Australia, building massive high-rise buildings. And there was a tiny segment in that story about how he used transcendental meditation as a tool for his stress management. And this idea of transcending in meditation, those two things together. I'd never come across meditation, but it really was like something had been ignited inside me. And so that's when I started to do my research and explore meditation and many different styles of meditation. But what I really resonated with was this transcending meditation. So that's where I started, by just learning to meditate and integrating that, going back to work and working on the trading room floor. So that was the starting point, and I continued on for 16 more years as a broker, but just meditating and not doing the drugs or the drinking.
Good for you. What a change. I just can't imagine, being in such a pressure cooker, and just literally what I'm hearing is you were literally going off the rails.
Yeah.
And obviously you were ready to find something else, which you have. And you mentioned transcendental meditation for the first time. And I was introduced to that as well with Deepak Chopra and Wayne Dyer when we were doing seminar work across North America. I was fortunate enough to hire them and do some seminar work. And that got me into meditation and just quieting the mind. And it made such a huge difference. So you were introduced to this method. Now, what about, where are you today? You're quite aware of different meditation techniques. You teach an awful lot of people how to meditate. What method or how are you meditating today, and how are you coaching others to get out of this rat race and allow their minds to quieten down?
Yeah, so going back to when I started doing what's called also Vedic meditation, so Vedic meditation, transcendental meditation, and I think Deepak Chopra's primordial sound technique is very similar, where we're using primordial vibrations or resonances or mantras to take the mind beyond. And transcending means to go beyond thinking, beyond your emotional experience, and beyond your physicality even. So it's quite a profound experience where we go into what's called Turiya, which means the fourth state. And so when I went into these deep states of meditation quite quickly with my technique that I'd learned, what happened was my body went out of this sympathetic nervous system, which is the stress response, into the parasympathetic nervous system. And that was a game changer for me. So all of those anomalies started to just simply melt away. And I became a very successful broker over all these years. And then what happened was, because I was doing further and further research into meditation, Eastern philosophy, and traveling across overseas, doing some more advanced programs and protocols, I decided eventually that I wanted to step out of that space as a broker and enter into a whole new world of being a meditation teacher and a coach and a speaker. And so now what I do these days, firstly with my own practice, is it's a very holistic approach. And this is one of the things that I teach in my retreats and in my workshops, is that meditation is a very profound tool to create an enormous amount of change in our lives. And as well as that, I do other things like yoga, my gym, breath work, do saunas, and all sorts of different things that support my meditation practice. So I'm not going to ever say that this is a one-hit wonder that will solve all of your problems. You don't need to do anything else. I think we do need to take a holistic approach to health and wellness. But the technique that I teach and practice still to this day, after 28 years now, is I still use Vedic meditation or transcendental meditation. Over time, what happens is we get more advanced programs and processes. So I've gone through quite a few advanced mantras and advanced processes that I integrate on a daily basis. But for anyone that's just starting out, I teach them the very basic version, which is that you sit with your particular mantra, and we teach you how to go beyond the experience of your thinking mind. It's really, most of our problems come from the thinking mind. If you think about all that, there is obviously the physical body, which holds a lot of our traumas, and we do need to address the physiology as well as the thinking mind. But we really want to start with, who are you when you don't think, and get you into the state of consciousness, or you being. There's the verb being and the noun being. So really getting you into the state of presence, awareness, or being is really where true freedom starts to lie.
Fabulous, fabulous. And so through the years, you've been able to develop more and more. I heard you talk about your gym, yoga. It's expanded significantly to the point that you also do corporate work at, some of the companies that you have coached and worked with, Amazon and Oracle, Coca-Cola, Harvard, Qantas. It's remarkable what you've been able to do. And when you take it corporately, are you able to actually get the corporation to buy in, and you're teaching their staff, their executives? How do you fit into that corporate side?
Yeah, it's not as big a buy-in as I'd like from the corporates yet. We still have a way to go before they are really starting to appreciate and recognize and embrace these practices on a bigger level. The science is there, but they're just really slow still to really embrace it on a practical level. I've got one organization that I work with. I'm not even allowed to use the word meditation. I have to use the word stress reduction, because I think it's going to conflict with people's religions or social viewpoints and things like that. So it's still early days, but I generally start with a keynote presentation talking about the sympathetic and the parasympathetic, the impact of being in the sympathetic nervous system. That's a stress response, how that's going to deteriorate your physical, mental, and emotional state, and over long term, going to really have a major impact on your health, and why we need to be operating in the parasympathetic, which is the peace response. And we call this flow state. So I'm doing a lot of work and moving a lot more towards work with companies in flow state, and the power of what happens when we get in that state. So it's just slow for companies to really start to embrace the science behind it, and to go beyond the idea that this is a spiritual practice. No, this is an optimization of the human experience practice. And that's what I'm just working with a lot of them to try to help them understand. So the early stages is just giving them the awareness first of the possibility of different alternatives for their staff, and a few minor techniques to give them some meditation processes to help them start to get a taste for it and experience for it. Some companies, I worked with Amazon's legal team for 2 years, and they were all in. They ran the program with the transcending meditation, and I worked with some of their staff to get them into that practice, which has been phenomenal.
Well, they've got to be seeing the results of when people start to get a little more balanced. Those 60, 70,000 thoughts that we have today are the same ones we have tomorrow and had yesterday. Those are some of the numbers that I've heard. But once meditation starts, you're actually able to release some of that. Would that be correct?
Well, I think that the greatest benefits that come from meditation is that we operate from a very different place. Now, and this is why it's really hard for a lot of the staff to integrate meditation on a daily basis, because we still measure our identity on activity, actions, acquisitions. What I have, what I've acquired, and what I've done is usually, for most people, the measure of their success in a day. I got all my emails done today. I managed to achieve this in a meeting today. I managed to get this done in my company. So the doing is the way we measure ourselves, rather than the being, what state we're in. And what we find is, if we start with the state that we're in, rather than the doing as the priority, then the doing becomes much more efficient. And it's really hard for staff and companies to start to see it that way, but it's going to take a fair bit of convincing. And some of them are starting to realize that if we can get the staff into a state of flow, of fulfillment, of peace and calm, then their doing becomes much more successful, much more efficient, much more beneficial. Ray Dalio, the world's largest hedge fund manager, managed $180 billion worth of assets at Bridgewater. He tweeted that meditation was the key ingredient to whatever success he's had. Oprah Winfrey runs OWN TV. She put out on, I think it was on, wasn't on Instagram, so it was before that, but she said that all of her staff, one of the prerequisites is that they do a daily meditation once in the morning, once in the afternoon within the company. She said it's completely changed her company. So the more we can start to see that the state we're in is more important than what we're doing, and then the state we're in, we're influencing in a better way what we're doing, then we'll get people to start to buy into the idea that if I spend 20 minutes meditating, then I'm actually going to be more efficient, more productive, more successful, have better brain functionality throughout the day than if I spent 20 minutes just getting more emails done.
Sure.
So it's going to be a reshaping of the way we value ourselves and our activities.
And I think you said something very important there, valuing ourselves. The individual, I think, comes back into focus, and you care about yourself a little bit more. You're not necessarily married to the corporation, but because things are so much clearer and there's so much more balance in your life, you're more effective. And so the company really gets more from you with you giving, I don't want to say giving less, but just being that much more focused.
Yeah, we see companies that, and I do a lot of research on this because it's information that I convey in my keynotes, that companies that, and even sports teams, one of the people I reference is a major coach, and we've had one great coach here in Australia, Rick Charlesworth, who was one of the most successful coaches, ran the Hockey Roos for many, many years. He took the captain out of the team, which is one of his strategies. He said that by putting a captain in the team, it meant that everyone played at a lower level and relied upon him to be the leader. And he says when he took the captain out, everyone actually had to rise up to a higher position to all realize that they're all leaders. And so the same sort of premise in some respects comes into our society. Not that we want to take CEOs and managers out of positions, but what we want to do is we want to inspire people to be more, and to realize that being more doesn't mean getting more or doing more. It actually means realizing your true nature and having a deep appreciation and resonance and connection to that. And when we start to be in a greater place of inner fulfillment, we tend to naturally express ourselves in a better way anyway. We realize greater potential. We have greater capacity, greater adaptive capacity. And these are things that will mean that your staff will operate in a better way. But a lot of companies are still in that extraction mode. How do I extract as much out of my staff so that I can get a better bottom line, so that I can actually get a better share price, so that my shareholders will be happier and will make money and get bigger bonuses? But we've really got to start changing the way we value things in our world, value our society. It's slow, but I'm seeing some incremental changes happening in the business and corporate world.
Sure. And today, I think the world is upside down more than it's ever been. On one side, yet it also appears that people are embracing and awakening to there's more to life than what we maybe have been told. Do you see those two kind of dovetailing together through all this work that you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. The biggest challenge we have is that we have to override a very deeply conditioned and coded society that's coded through higher up all the way through to the lower levels of society. And that is that your sense of fulfillment will be dependent upon what you extract from life. So if you have a nice house, if you have a nice car, if you get, more Coca-Cola, or if you get, higher levels of Bitcoin, then you will respond in your state to that situation. So you're in what we call outcome-oriented happiness, where your happiness is dependent on a particular outcome. And you need an outcome or an acquisition to elevate your state. And we're coded with this on our Netflix and our TV commercials all around us, is that very deeply ingrained code that extraction from life will make you more fulfilled. And that's obviously extremely detrimental to our society and to our environment, but it's also really disempowering for the individual, because it means that circumstances, things that you get, the way things unfold in life are going to be what you're at the mercy of. And it never unfolds how we want it to. We never get to where we want to, and we're always looking for more. And so we'll never really reach a level of fulfillment, which is why we've got one of the wealthiest societies we've ever been in. Not for everyone, but certainly if you look at the history of humankind, we're more affluent now than we've ever been, yet we're probably the most medicated and unhealthy and sickest we've ever been as well. So we do need to change the model, and it starts from our perception and our relationship to the world around us.
Sure. And as you said, it's a slow process. Very
slow process.
And so obviously we've touched on a lot of the corporate side. Is it very similar as well then, Tom, when you're dealing with individuals?
Absolutely. Yeah, because the corporates are individuals. Even though we can look at a brand, we can look at a logo, we can look at a profit and loss spreadsheet, a P&E, ultimately it's just a group of people that get out of bed every day and turn up. And that's all a corporate is. It's just a group of people. And there's people in that organization, under that brand, under that logo, that are making decisions every single day. Mm-hmm. So everything in the world comes down to the individual.
Sure. Now, you also deal with individuals, totally independent people, mom and pops. Do you deal with all age groups as well? Are you able to get a hold of some of these younger people? Because in Asia and India, meditation or that quiet time is really important in their society. And, you have a 6-year-old that can sit just quietly with themselves for half an hour, 45 minutes, and it's just natural for them. Are you having some impact on younger people as well now?
A little. Predominantly, most of the work that I do is with parents. I do enjoy a lot of work, what we call B2C, to the consumer, to the individual. Mm-hmm. And, most of that work is through workshops, teaching meditation, running retreats. And I find that the parents are firstly a lot more receptive to that level of information and process and practice. Mm-hmm. The youth of the world are still exploring the outside world. They haven't quite finished their research. And when someone's 30, 40, 50, they're kind of like, I'm done with that world. Show me how to find peace. Whereas the younger world are still exploring the very intriguing and curious world around them. So there's less inclination for them to want to meditate. But I have worked with some schools and worked with some classes and worked with younger kids. And when there's a level of intrigue and curiosity there, it's quite phenomenal to see the impact. I actually saw the principal of a school in America that the only prerequisite of that school is that everyone meditates in the morning when they get to school, and everyone meditates in the afternoon before they go home from school. And so it's a structured, formalized program where the only difference with this school to any other school is that they all meditate. And that school performs in the top 1% in every category in the country, from sport to debating to geography, science, maths, English. And it's interesting because all the stats is there, all the data is there, and yet there's no school in the world that I've come across yet that integrates that exact process of meditating when they get to school and meditating when they go home from school. So we know it works. We know that the information, the stats, the data is there, but it's just so hard to get schools to, again, compromise some of their daily curriculum for what they see as a waste of time. But really what they're doing is they're removing the stress response from the students, optimizing their brain functionality, improving their biochemistry, increasing their adaptive capacity, which reduces stress response. And it's phenomenal the impact that you can have when we integrate these things into schools and classrooms, because we see it already. But so few schools are open to the idea of this yet. And this, again, is just something that we've got to have to take time to work through. I did teach my daughter's class one day when they were 8 years older. The teacher asked me to come in, and she was blown away by the impact of just an 8-minute meditation for these children. And she was just couldn't believe how quiet and calm and still they were in and after the meditation. And I asked her when I ran into her not long afterwards if she was continuing on with that process, and she wasn't. And I was just, you've seen the information, you've seen the data. It just doesn't take long for you to put these children into a quiet state, help them find some inner peace, and then build their day of education on top of that. But it's just very hard for teachers to want to embrace that yet.
We're breaking that mold again. But it does. It makes so much sense. If you were to suggest to someone, what is a way that we can approach some of these younger people? And when I say younger people, let's talk maybe 25 and under, and kind of explain to them that little bit of quiet time can make a significant difference. Is there a way to explain it that you've been able to make that connection with those young people?
There's two ways about this. And it's a great question. I love your questions. Thank you. The first thing is children learn predominantly through osmosis, which means by observing, being around, by being in the vicinity of a parent or an adult. And so if they don't see their adults in their life acting from a place of peace and calm, and seeing them physically sitting with their eyes closed, embracing stillness, then they're not going to be inspired to do the same. If they see their parent coming home with a box of pizzas and case of beer and getting drunk and watching the footy and yelling and screaming at their wife, then they're going to think that that's normal. And they're going to learn through osmosis that this is just how we behave. If they see their mom or dad screaming at someone that pulls in front of them in the traffic, then they just think that that's normal. And so we see this in our TV programming. We see it in our educational program in some respects. It's just normalized in our society that stressed people, most of the TV dramas that I watch on TV have extremely stressed people reacting over the top to small situations and circumstances. I won't name them, but they're just very household sitcoms and drama shows that most people are watching every day. And drama is the whole nature of up and down and being reactive and responsive and throwing pots and pans around and crying when someone doesn't love them anymore. And so this is the deep indoctrination that the parents are conditioning our children to be that way. So we do need to change the parents. That's why I like working with adults. The second thing is, if a child is struggling, the question I ask them is, how's life working out for you? And are you open to the idea of trying something different than what you're currently doing? Because if what you're doing is leading to a very unhappy, stressed, chaotic life, then would you be open to the idea of slightly tweaking your current status quo to seeing if that might change things? And so just really helping them understand that the current trajectory very rarely will change if nothing changes.
Sure.
And so asking them if they want to continue on that trajectory, then keep doing what you're doing. And if you'd like that current trajectory to be slightly different, maybe more peaceful, more happy, sleeping better, less reactive, less obsessed about how people see you, then maybe we could talk about doing a few techniques that might help you to have a little bit more freedom and a little bit more happiness and a little bit more health along the way.
Sure. Tom, I can't tell you how I'm just so happy that there's someone out there doing that. As a young man, I was a relatively calm person, as so I thought. And as I got into business, different stresses affected me. And we were in the construction business, doing high-end renovations and high-end homes and schools and things. And there was a time in my late 20s that I remember we were framing, and I bent a nail. This isn't what we call a major world catastrophe here. I bent a nail on a floor. And I got so frustrated, I smacked the floor with a hammer and put a hole in it. Not very smart, obviously. Had to cut out this piece of floor, take 45 minutes, fix it, repair it, get it all done, for just losing your cool over something that was totally irrelevant. The same thing happened, not necessarily a nail, but there was an incident, and I turned and I threw a hammer, a 28-ounce framing hammer, across the room. At that point, that was a sign for me to say, something's wrong, something needs to give. And I can't tell you how I wish there were someone such as yourself that would have been there to say, come here, we need to have a little conversation. Let me give you some different ideas. But I was fortunate enough to be active and recognize that that was a problem, and was introduced to a little personal development. And from the personal development, it expanded into other people doing other things. And lo and behold, meditation came in, and that type of attitude and those type of actions, I mean, disappeared. The focus went off of me, and how I'm looking in other people's eyes. I found it came inside, and it was like, how do I feel about that? Is it feeling good for me? So I champion you on this. What you're talking about makes so much sense and is so needed right now.
Yeah, one of the things that I feel is the simplest of all principles, but the one that we're missing the most in our education and the knowledge sharing from our elders to our youth, is the understanding of the law of karma. And it's so basic and so powerful. So I share with I've got two children. They're 22 now, twins, a boy and a girl.
Wonderful.
My dear angels. And, I taught my children to push boundaries, to question and challenge authority and establishment, because I want you to really see if you can, step out into the world and do great things. And, so part of that is to not always accept that what everyone's saying and doing is the right thing. And maybe there's other alternatives and other ways to do things. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I had to teach them the law of karma, because sometimes you're going to do things that maybe aren't the right thing, and you're going to suffer the consequences. And so karma is an incredible process that teaches us the law of cause and effect. And I said that you're going to have to learn through life that certain things, and sometimes you learn the hard way, certain things you're going to do, and you're going to cop the consequences. But those consequences aren't there to punish you. Those consequences are there to support you to actually find the right path. And so teaching children, like you said, you smashed that floorboard, then you spent 45 minutes having to fix the damage. There's your karma, that you did something in a reactive response that led to some not major karma, but it was certainly some karma. And so letting them know that they're in a sort of a quantum field of intelligence that is always guiding and supporting them, and that for every action, there's a corresponding reaction. You help the lady cross the road, she gives you $5. You go and steal the old lady's handbag, you're going to get put in prison. And so this incredible science and intelligence is actually there as part of a support system for them, and to help them start to see that. And that's going to help them make better decisions and guide them through life more than anything else.
Perfect. You know, you and I are a little bit older. You know, I'm still part of the baby boomer generation, and we were brought up in a system that we were told all the things that we were supposed to do, how to behave, etc. And I really appreciate the fact that you're suggesting to your children, you know, these are things that we've been told, but I'm not necessarily saying you have to abide by them. You need to push the boundaries a little bit. And what I'm finding right now, people that are my age, some older, some a little bit younger, but they're also now coming around saying, there's a lot more to life. What have I left on the table because I've been told that certain things need to happen? What is there that I can learn about myself? What have I been taught that really isn't true? How can I open up my mind? How can I open up a different way of thinking? And again, when we quieten the mind, some people refer to it as prayer, some people refer to it as meditation. But when we do quiet that mind, what I'm finding are our friends right now are starting to consider, wow, that quiet time is really cracking me open, which, as you said earlier, Tom, is giving permission now to a younger generation, grandparents, even to grandchildren versus parents to children. There seems to be a real significant link today, grandparents to grandchildren. It's almost like they're bypassing some of the parent stuff. Are you witnessing any of this?
Certainly some of that. I think what I'm more interested in is giving people access to not the data in their brain, which is coded into them predominantly partly through ancestry and genetics, but predominantly through the society that they're in, but to access an interior field of wisdom, because wisdom is innate. It's not something we learn. It's not something that you get on a podcast. Wisdom is something that we deeply know. And when we can tap into that beyond the intellect, which is we call them vasanas, the tendencies of the mind, those 50,000 thoughts you talked about. If we took an audit of those thoughts, you will see that many of them are repetitive thoughts, and most of them aren't really actually your thoughts. So if you're watching TV and there's a commercial about drinking beer, then you're now engaging in the people who have made that ad, their thoughts, because they're the ones that are programming your mind to drink beer. So we want to access the field of wisdom that's inside of us, a deep intuition and a guidance system that is something that helps us make better decisions. But when we operate from the thinking coded mind, then our daily code that we're having put in front of us, if you just watch any free-to-air TV, you're going to get a bunch of ads popping up in between the show. And a lot of those ads are going to be for pizza. They're going to be for Big Macs. They're going to be for Coca-Cola. They're going to be for, we see a lot in Australia of gambling apps where you can go on an app on your phone and start gambling. We're going to see ads for horse racing. We're going to see ads for drinking beer. They've now stopped the smoking ones, but that was only because they realized that was unhealthy. But everything else that they're advertising is still unhealthy. And so those codes get put into us, and that gets indoctrinated into us. And that's what most people are using as their guidance system for how to live life. And that's how they live life, because that's what they've been told to live life doing. Sure. But when we transcend that in meditation, what happens is we start to access a deeper knowingness. And then we start to question, I know you're saying that, but I'm not sure if that's true or the best thing for me. So then we start to have this interesting play between what we're being told we should be doing and our inner knowingness that's arising up within, that might start questioning that level of information that's coming in our direction.
Sure.
And then hopefully making more discerning decisions on that.
Well, and what you're saying is really reminiscent to the title of this podcast, The Wise Old Soul, which is found in each and every one of us. We're born with it. It's innate. So I totally understand what you're saying. And allowing people to find that for themselves, we really can change the world. So Talk to me a little bit, Tom. I'm going to change a little bit. Talk to me about the Stillness Project.
Well, I had this vision when I came across meditation. And like I said, I had panic attacks, I had anxiety, I had insomnia, agoraphobia. I was constantly sick with all sorts of viruses all the time. And eventually this addictions, of course, huge levels of addictions. And then I learned to meditate. And it just melted away within days and weeks. I could not believe how quickly my state changed. And it was all simply because when I quietened the thinking mind and I quietened my nervous system, physiologically, the level of rest when the mind transcends is up to 4 times deeper than sleep metabolically. So we'll go into a very, very deep level of physiological rest. And that's when all the healing in my body started to happen. And all those anomalies simply just melted away. And so when I came out of that sort of transition for 3 or 4 weeks, I was just like, why is the world not doing this? And I became a little bit almost too enthusiastic because I was a little bit projectionist, I guess, projecting onto everyone. But I learned how to harness that and tame that and regulate that a little bit more over time. But I just felt that, and I could see that many of the world's problems were stemming from we have a very stressed world. And we have a very distorted world. We have a very conditioned world. And we have a very disempowered world. And the meditation solves many of those problems by simply closing our eyes, sitting for 20 minutes, and going into a deeper meditation. And I know it's not a cure-all, and it's not going to make the world perfect by no means whatsoever. I'm not perfect, and I still make mistakes, and I still deal with stuff, and I still have to go through my own processes. And I've been meditating for 28 years. So it doesn't make anyone immediately enlightened and perfect by any means, but it definitely helps to make them be better, make better choices, and continually have the capacity to improve who you are and have that adaptive capacity. And one of the things that we're noticing in the world is that the requirement for adaptive capacity is increasing. So we have greater requirements to adapt, but we have less adaptive capacity, which is causing that gap, which is causing stress. And what we find with meditators is that they increase their adaptive capacity. And in a world that's requiring you to increase adaptive capacity, you need to adapt quite quickly. And so my passion was to bring meditation to the households of the world, to bring it to the corporations, to bring it to the schools. And so everything that I was doing, from making a film, writing books, to speaking with large corporations and organizations, to running retreats and teaching meditation, I haven't made the impact that I would have liked to have made at this point. And that's just me being the natural, without being too attached to it. I used to be a little bit more attached to it, so I'm less attached now to the outcome. But, I was very enthusiastic about going out with all guns blazing and bringing meditation into the world. But these days I'm sort of just cruising along a little bit, knowing that I'll be doing this for many years to come, and let's just take it in, make a bit of a journey out of it, and enjoy and smell the roses along the way. Whereas before I was a little bit too rigidly focused on getting the outcomes. So that was probably my own broker style that was coming out into my meditation teaching.
Yeah, basically the corporate entity was still there.
Yeah.
And wanting to, I know how fast I can move things. I can make things. I'm a mover and a shaker.
Yeah.
But sometimes when we're gentle, that gentle push can actually have more impact to more people.
Yeah, so wise. That's absolutely exactly what I'm finding myself as well. The less I need to have that outcome, surprisingly, the more of the outcome that I'm having.
Sure. Tom, in your experiences, I've read a lot about when 1,000 or a couple of thousand people meditate simultaneously, they talk about crime rates decreasing in that area. In your research, have you come across anything to do with that?
Yeah, we have had some studies done on that. And there was this initial thought that if we can get, I can't remember what the number was, it was like 10,000 or 100,000 people meditating on the planet, then we're going to have a better planet. I think we need a lot more than that, which is, I think, if we get 1 billion people, maybe we might see things starting to change. But there is a wonderful group of people, some colleagues of mine in a small country town here in New South Wales, Australia, a place called Nowra, and you can go to their Instagram, Be Here Nowra, and they are doing sort of some scientific studies on if they can get 1% of that town. And the town did have quite a few problems, and they're starting to see some phenomenal results. They've taught a lot of people in that town how to meditate. And I really like the idea of going into a small town that has got some problems and then being able to create quite a scalable impact by not having to teach too many people to meditate to see some responses and reactions. And that's what they're doing. So that's one interesting thing. They haven't quite completed their work yet. And so we're just starting to do a bit more research, and they're doing phenomenal things there. But I think we'll start to see more of that sort of thing popping up in the next 2 years or so.
And I appreciate the smaller population. You can see that impact, I'm sure, very quickly.
Yeah.
Very quickly.
I'd love, this is an invitation to all the meditation teachers that are listening at the moment. I would inspire you, and I'm thinking while I'm talking right now, maybe I should do that as well. If we can all pick a small town, it's hard in a big city. Like, I'm going to make an impact in New York. It's like, yeah, good luck. See how you go. I mean, not to dismiss that idea. I mean, we definitely should be trying that in New York. Maybe if we get 10,000 teachers teaching 10,000 students each, then maybe we'll see an impact in New York. But if you could all choose one town in your local state, in your state, and decide to go there for 12 months and teach as many people as you can to meditate and see what happens in that town. Quite interesting if we had a lot of teachers doing that.
Sure. Tom, do you do any work online with people?
Yeah, absolutely. I do a lot of coaching online, and that's mentoring, and particularly corporates and individuals, and also a lot of conscious leaders. So I work with a lot of yoga teachers, meditation teachers, healers, breath workers to help them grow their businesses. What I've found was that a lot of people were coming out of their coaching programs, their training programs, getting trained in breath work and yoga and meditation, in healings, and yet really having very little business acumen and know how to structure and frame a business that's going to financially support them. Because if we can't get financially supported, then we're going to really struggle to do this full time, which means that we're going to have to go and get a job part time, which means that we're not allocating all of our energy and time to the thing that we love and what we're good at. So we really want to get them into financial situations that enable them to be able to go full time and focus on this, which does require business acumen and some structural changes to the way they're doing things. So I do a mentoring program around that called Zen Academy. But I am, during COVID, we did start to explore the idea of teaching people online. It's not usually the protocol, but again, I think one of the most important things in these times is being adaptable. And I think we're going to have to be adaptable with the way ancient traditions have been delivered. And some of the processes may get watered down in this process, but at the same time, in the watering down of that, and I respect that it might not be as pure as it was for thousands of years when it's taught in a particular way, the watering down does also enable large audiences to access it at the same time. And where I'm coming from now with this idea of being able to teach using technology is that, and being open to it, is that, yes, we might lose something, but what will we gain as a result of that? If we've got people that can't access these techniques because A, they can't afford them by having the teacher in their locality, or B, they can't access a teacher, then does that mean that we deprive that person of having the accessibility to a program that they could never access? Because most teachers, let's face it, are in Venice Beach, LA, or Bondi, Sydney. So, there's not a lot of teachers in these small rural towns, or in even some countries. There is many countries in the world where it's very hard for people to access these teachers. So I think we're going to have to adapt, and we're going to have to go and then start bracing technology a whole lot more.
Sure. And I would think if you do embrace that technology, as you said, the person that's never going to sign up for the class or go, they're used to technology. That's how they learn. That's how they communicate. Everything's based on technology. But you're getting to those people that would never do it, and you make that impact. Once they've been touched, I would think that the opportunity to allow them the chance to grow through technology would grow to the point that they would want to get to a live event at some point. They would want to meet you face to face, or meet that teacher face to face, and really get a grounding. So again, it's starting small. I appreciate, and I get the watered down idea, but at the end of the day, it could be a massive mountain.
I think it's very naive to think that the world that we would all like to live in, we call it Sat Yuga, an age of enlightenment.
Mm-hmm.
Be very naive to think that we're going to get there without technology. The knowledge has been around for thousands of years, and it couldn't spread very far because of its limitations. Its inability to access the masses was so capped and restricted. And technology enables us to really proliferate this knowledge far and wide into all corners of the world now. There's no corner of the world that doesn't have access to technology. Some obviously a little bit more than others, but there's really nearly every person on the planet now, just about. I think we've got a few to go still, but we're really starting to access large groups of people. And even if that person never is able to get to a live event, the fact is that they can still learn this wisdom, learn these ancient techniques, and learn these methodologies. And I understand and appreciate a lot of teachers wanting to be rigid and calcified about holding on to traditions in a particular way. I get that. I respect that purity that they're wanting to maintain. Mm-hmm. And I'm all for that. I think it's good that we've got some people maintaining that purity. Mm-hmm. I think if you want to get to Sat Yuga, there's no way we're going to be able to do that by doing it that way. We are going to have to open up, and we're going to have to be adaptable. And technology is, we talk about this in the portal, technology is here to help bootleg us upwards. It's here as a part of the methodology for us to get to an enlightened planet. Mm-hmm. And one thing I find fascinating is that some of the greatest, most awakened sages of our history, from Sri Sri Anandamayi Ma, from Paramahansa Yogananda, from Ramana Maharshi, these people all have Instagram accounts. It's quite fascinating. And they've got people obviously facilitating those Instagram accounts, but their quotes, their wisdom is able to be retained, not just preserved, but also shared in a much bigger way, because they have podcasts now playing their recordings, they have Instagram accounts now, and they have YouTube channels now. And so it's really exciting how technology is enabling us to spread this information in a really wonderful way.
Yeah, I just see so much growth with it. And I believe, Tom, with your knowledge and your understanding of business, I'm so glad that you brought up the topic of teaching yoga teachers, meditation teachers, people that are in the business of wanting to make a difference in people's lives and making it a career path, allowing them the opportunity to understand some of the business, though. Without that business, failure, unfortunately, is pretty significant, pretty high. Sometimes I don't think they are able to get off the ground because financially they can't make a go of it at the beginning. Their plan didn't quite work. And so I champion you on that idea of helping these people help themselves, which in turn helps lots of others.
Yeah, we have to break through a little bit in our society still, because we do have still a bit of resistance, partly from the facilitators and the teachers, of valuing their work and getting remunerated for their work and making an exchange of value for their work, but also from the society as well. A lot of society still thinks, you're a meditation teacher, why should you be getting paid? Because what we have is a very old understanding about meditations that lived in ashrams and lived in monasteries, and they walked the streets begging from people that actually did work so that they could feed themselves. Whereas now we've got meditation teachers that have children and wives and mortgages and families and rent to pay and car registration to cover and electricity bills. And so they do need to firstly fund themselves, and they do need to pay for their own existence. And secondly, we need to appreciate the exchange of value that they're bringing to the community. Now, we're all willing to pay for a chiropractor. We're willing to pay for a doctor. We're willing to pay for a travel agent. We're willing to pay for a plumber. And we've got to just bring in, as well as that, can we be willing to pay for someone that is going to help us have less stress, feel happier, have greater health, and stave off some of the ailments that are quite prolific in our world these days. And we've known that meditation and yoga can play a huge role in making society a healthier, happier place. So is it okay that we, make millions, if not billions, from selling Coca-Cola, but we're not okay with someone getting paid to teach meditation or yoga? So these are the sort of things that we've just got to help society shift their awareness and start to break down some old preconceived thoughts that we've got running through our society still.
So, Tom, what would it take for people such as yourself, myself? We've got a friend in Karin Swain who does wonderful work on Sunday evenings and also has a great podcast out there. But taking some of these individuals such as ourselves and coming together and literally planning in 3 months or 4 months, 6 months, I don't care if it's a year, and say, we want to meditate on a particular day. I appreciate they've done it on rare occasions, but really linking together many people that are doing podcasts. There's such an impact online today. How can we put that together and set up a time that we do meditate? Yes, I appreciate there's different time zones to deal with. So, how we deal with it, I don't know, but there's got to be a way to introduce this in a massive way just for the sake of doing it. I see the connections that you've developed, the way you're able to communicate. I very much appreciate you're keeping these very simple, straightforward. I think there's an opportunity to try to do something to bring awareness to quiet time for people.
Yeah, I love that idea.
Have you
they
done
do it in look, we have had some group meditations globally. We've done some really exciting live, what we call med mobs in Sydney, where we would secretly organize large groups of people, hundreds of people, to go to a particular location and then just sit down randomly and all meditate together in the middle of a street, in the middle of a public walkway. We did it in Martin Place during Christmas time a few years ago, and we got a really good video of that. So we've done some large group ones in person, and we've definitely seen people like Deepak and Gabby Bernstein, Oprah Winfrey collaborate doing large global ones. My vision is this. There's a lot of work goes into organizing one of those types of events. And a lot of people say they're going to turn up and they don't end up turning up. And it's just a lot of work. And I do like the idea and I like the vision of it. But if I can get 1 billion people meditating now, those people, without coordinating a particular time for all of us to meditate, but if everyone, and generally most of my students still meditate every day. So if you've got meditators all around the world meditating on a daily basis, then you're going to get that goal happening anyway. And what you're going to see is this really nice 24-hour window as the sun moves around and everyone gets up each morning to meditate. Then generally by nature, you should have that happening anyway, which is the whole world meditating. Well, large groups of meditators meditating not simultaneously at that particular minute, but throughout that 24-hour window. Because if they all meditate on a daily basis, then you're going to get a whole day of people meditating.
Sure. Well, as we get closer to wrapping things up, maybe you could talk to me a little bit about some of the books that you've written, Tom.
Yeah, I guess our main book is the book, The Portal, that came with the film. So we've got a film out which looks at crisis and how meditation helps us get through crisis, and how we'll look at individual crisis. And we've got 6 individual stories that have all gone through crisis. And we've got a global crisis that we're facing as well. And that global crisis is a result of individual crises. And so we look at how meditation can help liberate us from the crisis and help us up level to a whole new level. And the crisis was actually playing a particular role in our life to help us get to that next level, because sometimes we don't get to the next level unless we have a crisis. Ideally, we want to get to the next level without the crisis. But unfortunately for humanity and our resistance to change, it looks like more often than not we need a crisis. So the book, The Portal, was an extraction of the film. We took those interviews, and Jackie and I, the director and myself, we added more chapters to the book. And that book's a really beautiful insight into where the world's at, where we might be at, and how we can transform using meditation. I've got a few other books, a kid's book called Missy Moo Meditates, which is about Missy Moo teaching her sister Boo how to meditate, and that's for children. And there's a little guided meditation in the back of that book. I've got a book on how to reduce anxiety and panic attacks, one on how to improve sleep, one on the 7 states of consciousness, another one looking at the mechanics of change and how Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, or the creative operator, the maintenance operator, and the destructive operator, are always at play in our life at any given point in time, and how we want to be Brahma dominant, creator dominant, and not destructive dominant. Unfortunately, for most of us, we're neither maintenance or destruction, which is very chaotic and messy.
Sure, sure. Now, where can they get those books? Where are they?
I think the best place for all of it, to find the film, the books, my retreats, my coaching programs, courses, just go to tomcronin.com and they'll be able to find all the information there on the website.
Perfect, perfect. Well, Tom, I think we could sit and continue to chat.
Absolutely.
I so appreciate you taking the time with us today and giving us a little insight to your own wise old soul. I so much appreciate what you're doing. I want to see you more successful than ever. Your vision is superb. Thank you. And I look forward to having the opportunity to speak with you again in the coming years, days, months, whatever it may be.
It's a delight. Thanks for inviting me along, and thanks for listening, everyone. And if you want to find me, come to Instagram, Tom Cronin, one word. Send me a message. I love hearing from people, and I'll be there to respond to you.
Terrific. We'll make sure that we put some of that in the information when we upload it a little bit further down the way. Tom, again, thank you. Have yourself a blessed day.
Thank you.